So this is the video to go with the slideshow photos that you've already seen of basically the process of me building it. I did not video it, but I did take some photos while I was building it, and now this is kind of a video of it kind of in its finished state. I still gotta clean it, pull it apart, paint it, and reassemble it, and just do a couple little fine details, and a couple of modifications. But as of right now, it's totally functioning, and yeah, I'll just go over the basics. So it's a 26-inch girls bike. I took the crank out and just welded some bolts on for foot pegs. Front brakes are still there. Obviously the rears are not. As far as a throttle goes, it's one of those China motorized bike twist throttles with the kill switch. And so it's all mounted in there. And the throttle cable runs down to the carburetor. I'll show that in a minute. And the kill switch runs down to here. Like I say, it's not finished. I still have to cut and butt connect this. But this is the original spot where the key switch would be on the motor. The motor itself is a 2-stroke snowblower motor from a single-stage 2-stroke snowblower. I believe it's about 100 cc's. It did have electric start, but there was no room for it, and there's really no need for it because this is a direct drive. So there's no clutch, no nothing. It's basically just a bump start, or you pull starter to get it warmed up, and then kind of hop on it, pushing it forward. So you'll see a video of that at the end, me riding it. So I retained the original fuel tank, and I just welded a couple of long pieces of threaded rod to capture the 2 tabs that actually mount the gasoline tank in place. It's crude, but it's effective. And then just a fuel line run all the way down to the factory carburetor. This exhaust looks homemade. I did not make it. I believe somebody had already fixed it once, and I just reused it. And coming around, you'll see it. I just used a 4-stroke clone engine, like a Honda knockoff motor, 6 horsepower. I used the exhaust pipe from that to muffle down the motor, because the original exhaust pipe, if you've ever disassembled one, is actually part of the framework, and I couldn't reuse it, so I just used this. It makes it nice and quiet, and it works as it should. So that's kind of it on this side. I used a small hand truck tire, and took it for a test drive, and basically immediately fried the original bearings that were inside. So I got some sealed ones that fit for the 5/8 throttle that I used, and actually fit inside the rim itself, and they're just a press fit. They don't go anywhere. Now this is just 5/8 throttle, and I just used a pile of nuts to clamp it to the frame. Also to keep the rim from walking around, I used a nut and a jam nut. I could have used nylox, but I just had a bunch of regular nuts, so I used them as a jam nut. Yeah, so that's basically this side, and I'll flip it around and continue on the other side. So this is the other side. You can see the bracket that I built. Basically just welded a long piece of throttle onto here with nuts to attach to the gas tank, and then a second one that kind of branches off in a triangulated fashion with another one to the other side, the other tab of the tank. Like I say, I still have to finish it all up. I just kind of threw it together to see if it was actually rideable. So we got the throttle cable coming around here, and I've just got this piece of wire for now holding the cable so it doesn't get hit by the chain. Now, what I used to actually hold the throttle cable in place is the piece off of the derailleur, the original bolt that you see going through it down lower is the carburetor bolt, and that's where it originally was riveted to the derailleur. I did have to drill the hole out, but it wasn't very much larger. And so I have adjustment now for the throttle, and of course it holds the cable in place as it should. And then as far as actually on the throttle butterfly, I just used a piece of wire through the original governor hole on the throttle itself, and it also holds the spring as well. You can see the spring is got a hole drilled in the shroud and it is attached there, and then you see the wire going through, and then the wire's just pushed through the hole, twisted around tight, and the spring's also grabbed on there, and it works as it should. I will have to put a manual lawnmower style throttle for the choke, just so I can adjust the choke while I'm riding it, because it's basically impossible the way it is. Well, the one modification that I will have to make is I'm gonna have to put a smaller sprocket on here. It doesn't seem like it's too close to the ground, but when you turn, this chain and sprocket actually hit the ground, so I have to make it smaller so it doesn't hit the ground, because there isn't a lot of room between that sprocket and the ground. So when you turn left, it does hit the ground. And you can see it's mounted there. I did have to slot the holes of the original frame to accept the larger bolt diameter, but I did do it in such a way that it retains as much structural integrity as possible. I have done the cutouts for the sprocket here and along the frame there, but I will box this all in, like I say, when I disassemble it. This is just a crude fix because the bolts are getting loose by the leverage here, and I am going to make this so I can disconnect and reconnect it if I want to remove the motor. But as you can see, the exhaust comes around there and kind of back to the factory. So it was originally coming out here. I just cut it and changed the angle so it would sweep back and go between the frame there. Now, as far as the actual mounting of the motor, I just took a piece of flat plate and made this all out of cardboard to figure out what angle will keep the carburetor flat and level. I didn't want the motor twisted, because then I would have to remake the throttle body to hold the, not the throttle body, but the actual piece to keep the carburetor level, because it is a float style carburetor. So I just basically based that off of the level of the motor to find the holes where I wanted them. So I used all 4 mounting holes for the motor, and the plate here, I cut it out, drilled it, cut out the center hole for the crankshaft to go through, added a little gusset here, and then just welded a piece of flat plate substantially larger than it needed to be. So when I did have the ability to mount it and line up the chain, I could slide it this way and this way, any infinite amount of adjustment basically to get this thing lined up. I will cut this off and basically make it flush, but for the meantime, that's how I did it. And I did have to do a little relief cut for the chain so it didn't hit. And tied it in here to the frame as well so it doesn't go anywhere. Now this is the smallest sprocket I can get in a 35 pitch chain, and this is the biggest sprocket I can get in a 35 pitch chain from Princess Auto to try and optimize gear ratio. And this is just, like I say, 35 pitch chain. Now, as far as the chain tensioner is concerned, it's actually the factory belt tensioner off the snowblower, and I just relocated the lever itself and made a new bracket to drop it down. Comes across, puts pressure on the slack side of the chain. Use the original spring and just this piece of wire for now. I will probably make like a cross brace here or some form to hold the spring in place, or a longer spring. Haven't thought of that yet. Yeah, that's sort of the overview of it. There will be a short riding video of me just going around in circles in the backyard. Just right now the weather's not very good, so I'm not going to take it on any more of a test spin, but I'll throw a couple of short clips in there at the end of this video.